1,000 troops on the Ukraine border as President Biden prepares for a video call tomorrow with Vladimir Putin. The question is whether there's anything Biden can say or do to stop Putin from a full-blown invasion. Joining me now is retired Naval Commander Peter Brookes. Commander, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Deja vu, Commander. I'm sure you remember February 2014 when the ground was hard enough from the winter. The Russian tanks rolled into Crimea. The Obama-Biden administration didn't do much to stop it. Is that where we are today?
Yeah, remember the little green men. Remember back in 2014. Yeah, there's reasons to be concerned. I mean, the Russians are putting all of these forces together. They're not making any outright demands that they would do something with these forces if something isn't done for them. So it looks like there's going to be an invasion. And Russia would certainly like to have a land bridge. It has an over-the-water bridge to Crimea from Russia proper, but they wouldn't mind having a land bridge through parts of Ukraine to Crimea now. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be concerned. I mean, sometimes when people look like they're going to do something, they're going to do it. Right. So Biden needs to be really tough in his conversation with Putin tomorrow and have a whole list of things that we could push back on Russia, including Nord Stream 2. Remember, we backed away from that. We probably should go to that because that increases Europe's dependence on Russian energy. And that was a bad mistake on the part of the Biden administration to back off of that. Here's
what President Biden said when he was going to Camp David, I believe it was on Friday. Let's roll the tape and get your reaction.
What I am doing is putting together what I believe will be the most comprehensive and meaningful set of initiatives to make it very, very difficult for Mr. Putin to go ahead and do what people are worried he may do.
Well, Peter, what does your gut tell you? Is that going to be enough to stop Putin?
Well, it depends what's in that comprehensive package. Is there military action? Is there military supplies to Ukraine? Is there NATO action? Or is it just economic and diplomatic? So we'd have to know, and they're not going to tell us in advance. But hopefully he'll be able to shed some light to Mr. Putin tomorrow and explain why this is a bad idea. And I think this is a terrible idea for Russia, too. I mean, he does not want to get into a war in Ukraine further than he already has. You can imagine this. These people consider themselves to be brothers, cousins, sisters, family. I mean, the origins of Russia are in Kiev and Ukraine itself. I mean, this, from a public relations standpoint, this would be terrible, and I think it would turn into a civil war, which would cost a lot on both sides.
By the way, as you were talking, Peter, we just got word that U.S. government officials will not attend the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. It's kind of all related to what we're talking about with Russia, which is to say how we are being tested by our enemies, at least people that don't look favorably on the United States. The Wall Street Journal had an interesting editorial today. It's called "Rogues Are on the March Around the World." And I'm going to read from it. It says, "The world is entering a very dangerous period. The hard men in Moscow, Tehran, of course Iran, and Beijing are going to test Mr. Biden to expand their power and spheres of influence. And it isn't at all clear if or how Mr. Biden will respond." They're willing to take the chance that he's going to wimp out, to use the vernacular. What do you think?
Well, it was a great piece. But really, what really struck me was that the fact that the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal didn't mention North Korea. That's another problem, right? And, of course, diplomatic relations, diplomatic talks with North Korea are going nowhere. North Korea is going into a very tough winter with a very poor economy. They're likely to lash out. So, yes, I agree. I agree with them. But I would add North Korea, and I also, of course, worry about al-Qaeda. I worry about ISIS. I worry about Afghanistan as a home for them. So, yeah, they're going to test us. The United States is looked at as weak and vulnerable at this point, especially after our shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan this summer.
Well, Iran is of particular concern to me. I just, they do have these nuclear ambitions. Of course, North Korea already has some nukes. But the bottom line is that the Trump administration did have Iran on the ropes. The price of oil came down because of our energy independence under President Trump. All of the sanctions, getting out of that deal that was struck with John Kerry, the Iran deal. It now looks like, because the price of oil has gone up, they're reinvigorated. They have they have money in their banks that they didn't have before, and they may get another nuclear deal. So it really concerns me, and it concerns, frankly, the people I've been talking to from Iran who are in touch with people there. It concerns the protesters, those people, those Iranians who are willing to go out in the streets and protest against the government are feeling as though they got targets on their back again.
Yeah, this is very unfortunate. I was a fan of the maximum pressure campaign. We cannot have Iran develop and deploy a nuclear weapon. And of course, the people of Iran are the victims of that regime and its policies. All
right, Peter Brookes, let's pray for them. I mean, they really deserve our support, at least our emotional support, if not some direct support. Oh, finally, I have to ask this final question. The producers are going to kill me. But Ukraine, we could be providing the Ukrainian government with things we're not, correct? And explain what we should be giving them.
That could be weaponry. You know, there could be all sorts of weapons if Russia decides to, cross this red line. And it's something we really need to consider because Ukraine has a right to its own territorial integrity and independence.
Commander Peter Brookes, great to see you. Thank you for being here, Peter.
Thanks,
Have
David.
a great holiday.